can stop romanticizing a person and still stay obsessed with them, because sometimes what keeps the obsession alive is not just the fantasy of the relationship. It's also the traits you think this person has. Maybe to you they seem free and independent. Maybe they seem very powerful. Maybe they seem like someone who is very emotionally deep and complex, who possesses magnetic qualities that might be to you impossible to replace. And once your mind turns them into a person who has something extraordinary, it becomes very hard to see the person clearly. So in this video, I want to help you take these very coveted and special traits apart and look at them in the cold light of day so that you can assess them properly. Now, maybe you're listening to this and thinking, but Madalena, this really was one of the strongest connections I've ever felt. It really was the best compatibility I've had with anyone. And honestly, you could be right. You may have assessed the connection accurately and felt something intense, unusual, even beautiful. But if you cannot actually be with this person, then at some point the question changes. It stops being, was this connection special? And it turns into, do I want to spend the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life emotionally organized around a person that I cannot build a real relationship or a real life with? That is also a choice. You're absolutely free to keep honoring that connection in your mind. You're free to keep longing for it and to let it stay central to the rest of your life. Some people do this. But this video is not for the part of you that wants to keep worshiping this connection. It's for the part of you that has started to realize, if I keep living like this, I will never have my peace back. I won't be able to move forward, and I won't be emotionally free of this limerence thing. And that's what I want to help you do today. So if that's where you are, one thing that can really help is learning to see that the traits we praise in a limerent object are often exaggerated, blown out of proportion, overvalued, and often filled in by a lot of our own projections. So in this video, let's talk about that. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we spend a lot of time talking about the way that we attach to other people, the ways we confuse intensity with compatibility, and the ways that we end up suffering under connections that feel really powerful, but that don't actually give us a real life. And a big part of healing is learning how to see those connections more clearly so that we can suffer less and make better choices.
Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow and I appreciate it so much.
Very often, limerence doesn't only attach to the person. It attaches to a whole cluster of traits. So many times it's not just this person is attractive for some sort of abstract reason. It can be things like, this is a person who feels very free, a person who feels very emotionally intense, like an acute display of emotionality. Or this person feels powerful in a way that makes me feel like they themselves have access to a bigger life. Your limerent brain doesn't simply look at a person and see a person. It builds a whole structure of meaning around them, and it makes them symbolic so that for you, they start to represent certain things. These things could be freedom, depth, adventure, power, new possibilities in life. The person is larger than life. They become a container for other things that are already in your own psyche. I'll give you an example from my own life. For me, one of the traits I value most is freedom. And sometimes, honestly, I think I can overvalue freedom. But because I know where it comes from in my own life, I know that it's not coming from a completely healthy place. It comes from a childhood where I felt trapped in situations that were scary and that I had no control over. So now I overvalue freedom, and I probably will for the rest of my life, because what scares me the most is not having freedom. So just so you understand, some of these things that we overvalue in other people, they don't necessarily have to come from good things in our own minds, right? But for me, what attracts me most to people is not just whether they're physically free in some obvious sense, it's also whether they feel intellectually free. emotionally free, mentally independent, whether they seem like people who are not trapped by convention, by fears, by self-imposed limitations that so many of us live under. This trait is very, very emotionally loaded for me. These are also traits that I valued very much in my father, who was a larger than life creature in my own childhood. It's also something I value in myself and I want more of in my own life. So when I connect to someone instantly in a very disproportionate or outsized way, very often it's because I hone in on that one trait because I've detected an exaggerated version of it. I see freedom turned all the way up. And because this trait means so much to me, I can become almost blinded by it. But the problem is that often what I'm calling freedom is actually being expressed in an unhealthy way in the person I'm attaching to. It's being expressed as excess, as instability, as a lack of rootedness, a lack of responsibility, or a way of living that looks free and thrilling from a distance, but on further thought is actually not something that I'd want to build a real relationship around. But when a trait has that much emotional power over you, it can be really hard to see what's what. You don't just see the person for who they are. You see the traits that you're already prone to worshiping in a way, right? And then the person starts glowing with a kind of meaning that is much bigger than who they actually are. And it's often how we lose sight of who the person in front of us is. We don't even have time to get to know them. But this is how our obsessions can take root and deepen. A lot of these traits are inferred rather than real, observed, verified by you traits. They're not traits that we've truly watched and seen over time. They're impressions, they're vibes we get from people, they're fragments of someone's personality. They're things that we've picked up on quickly and then sort of filled in the blanks in our own mind and with our own projections. This happens a lot in limerence because we often don't have the time to really get to know a person before limerence sets in and lights us on fire. Even the good parts of limerence, right? The falling in love or lust or infatuation or crush or whatever you think of limerence as. Even that part is so intense and fast and driven by dopamine that we have very little time and very little objective appreciation of the real person we're attaching to. So a lot of the time, we're responding to what we think is there. For example, we confuse mystery with depth. A person who's hard to read, hard to get access to, perhaps hard to understand because of their limited or not very forthcoming communication. We take these things to mean that they must be deep and mysterious. But sometimes they're not deep at all. They're just closed off or uncommunicative. They don't know how to communicate properly, or they simply don't want to communicate with us as much as we would hope for. But we can confuse what is actually emotional distance or just a lack of communication with a strength, with something that we may value. Someone can seem very self-contained and calm and hard to shake, and we read that as power, as self-control. But sometimes those traits are actually just detachment or avoidance. We can confuse confidence with self-possession, and the two are not at all the same. We also have a terrible, terrible time confusing charisma and easy social grace with actual character, especially if we're a little bit more introverted ourselves. And we definitely, definitely confuse passion with real compatibility because it sweeps us off our feet. And what many, I would say most episodes of limerence have in common is a person who is inconsistent or who is confusing or hard to access or unavailable. And we interpret those traits as being high value. This is one of the biggest problems. Because once someone becomes hard to reach or inconsistent or is withholding themselves from us or they're difficult to get close to, perhaps unwilling to communicate, our mind begins to work very hard at explaining away those traits. It starts trying to turn that difficulty into something else. This is how we begin to assume that the person must be worth pursuing when they're actually showing us through their actions and their behaviors that they are not that at all. Difficulty is not real depth or value. A lot of the time, difficulty is just difficulty. If you're still in that stage where part of you is treating your limerent connection like it is something sacred and exceptional, after it's become clear that something is not quite right, go watch my video called Stop Romanticizing Them after this one, because it pairs really well with what we're talking about here. So a lot of what we call the traits of a limerent object are not actually things that we've carefully and honestly vetted. They're interpretations. And if we want to break the spell just enough so that we can breathe and expand ourselves a little bit outside of the obsession of limerence, one of the most useful things we can ask ourselves is this: what have I actually observed here in front of me taking place over a period of time? And on the other hand, what are the things that I've really just filled in with my own interpretations? But then there is another question, and I think this is where this video can become really useful for you. It's not just whether the trait you value is real. It's also whether the trait actually works for you in real life. A lot of the things that are incredibly attractive in fantasy are much less attractive in a daily relationship life. For example, if we talk about my own overvaluation of freedom, I'm so attracted to people who embody that trait, but in real life, I don't value freedom to that extent. If my partner wanted to be as free as he possibly could be at all times, I probably would not want him to be my partner anymore. It would be excessive. And if I got to be as free as I would ideally want to be in my fantasy life, I don't think I would make for a very good partner either. At some point, I have to rein myself in, and I expect my partner to also rein in his pursuit of freedom to some degree, so that we can actually be a good team together. But when I'm magnetically attracted to a person for these traits, I don't think about any of that. All that goes out the window. I just think, wow, this person embodies every piece of freedom-seeking behavior that I've always wanted for myself, and it is diabolically attractive. So this is where I think that I have to slow down and you have to slow down, and we have to ask ourselves whether the traits we're obsessed with or the traits we're magnetically attracted to are actually valuable to us in real life, and to what extent. Because freedom can very easily become a total lack of responsibility. That's its shadow side. Mystery can become poor communication. Mystery can even become something as simple as a language barrier, or someone just not being very forthcoming about their intentions, about their connection to you, and so on. Independence can become plain unavailability. A person who's highly independent and who wants to do their own thing all the time may simply not be around very much to actually spend time with you. Confidence can easily become selfishness. An adventurous spirit that is always on the move can become instability as far as a real relationship is concerned. And intensity, especially emotional intensity, can become chaotic and be very disruptive to everyday life. I've connected to people who were incredibly emotionally expressive, and that was part of what made them so compelling and attractive to me, but in day-to-day life, I know that it would be overwhelming for me. I need a partner with a great degree of emotional stability for me to be able to live a good, productive, settled life beside them. I know this about myself. And someone who's very emotionally expressive is too much for me. I need emotional expressiveness to stay under a certain level. That's just part of my own needs in a relationship. So sometimes the things we are praising in someone isn't a relationship strength for us at all. Sometimes it's just the trait that happens to hit one of our deepest longings, or one of our fantasies, or wounds, or even unlived desires. I think that's where things get more interesting, because sometimes what hooks us is not our desire for the person, is our grief or our longing around parts of ourselves that we have not fully or truly lived out. Sometimes the person seems to embody things that we want more of in our own life: more confidence, more freedom, more boldness, more sensuality, more creativity, more direction, more ease. What starts to feel like obsession with another person may partly be obsession with the version of life they seem to represent. That doesn't mean that your attraction to this person is fake, but it does mean that some of that charge, perhaps a lot of the charge of the connection, may not belong entirely to that person. Some of it may belong back to yourself and to your own unlived parts. When you start seeing these things, the questions change again. Now they become, what is this person showing me that I need to develop, that I need to reclaim or integrate in myself and in my own life? If what pulls me to another person is their confidence, where can I be more direct, more confident? If what draws me to a person is their freedom, where has my own life become too restrictive, too constrained? Where am I trying to express my freedom? If what draws me to another person is their social ease, where do I need to practice being seen socially out in the world a little bit more naturally? The more you can build these qualities into your own life in healthy ways, not in over-exaggerated ways, the less mythic that the other person starts to feel. So the goal here is not just to tell yourself, detach at all costs. The goal is to really understand what is happening underneath limerence well enough so that the spell itself weakens on its own. That is your best way out of limerence. The more carefully you examine the traits that you value in this person, the less mythic they become. Limerence feeds on exaggeration, on symbolism, on projection, on the emotional charge and intensity of the connection, and on the meaning that we attach to people. But when you slow down and you ask yourself, what does this person represent? What is real about their traits? What is fantasy? What about those traits is actually useful in a real life relationship? And what belongs back to me? Then the obsession can lose some of its power. This is often how you can start coming back to yourself and regaining control over your own emotions and your own mental space. You can also do a quick journal exercise based on this video. You can write down things like what you think this person has that you really want. What evidence do you actually have that this trait in them is real and stable? What is the shadow side or the darker side of this trait that you like so much? And how might you begin building more of that quality in your own life in a healthy way? That kind of reflection can help you separate the real person from the bigger meaning that your mind has attached to them, and that's where you can detach yourself from your grip on this person. And if you want to go deeper into this, I'd really recommend my video called Can't Stop Thinking About Them, Limerence Journaling Prompts, because it gives you a more guided way to work through some of this on paper. Take good care. Until next time.